Well, as the Flintstones theme song says, we'll have a gay old time. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle now. Bill, new stats are out from a group called GLAAD, G-L-A-A-D. They do an annual survey to determine how many regular and recurring characters in television are either lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and a variety of other categories that they cover. And let me just give you some of the stats from the latest report, and this comes from the Hollywood Reporter. There's good news on all fronts. Apparently, LGBTQ characters up 31% overall on all platforms. That's 20 plus, up 20 points on cable, and streaming services like Hulu and Netflix up 72% from last year. Bisexual characters up 26%, transgender up 53%, HIV-positive characters up 350%. Now, in fairness, there were only 2 of them, and now there are 7. Along with this stat, it's becoming a more diverse group of LBGB, you know what I mean. 22% of these characters are now Black, 8% Latino, and 8% Asian Pacific Islander, and about 50-50 men and women. So they've got some gender balance there. Bill, they track these numbers every year, and they publish this report. What do you think is the impact of these growing numbers of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer characters and their racial and sexual diversity in television?
Well, first of all, I'd like to start by pointing out something that most people don't seem to understand anymore in this heated rhetoric of these days. But just because I'm in favor of one thing, that doesn't automatically make me opposed to something else. You see, I can be in favor of 2 things at the same time. The thing that I'm in favor of, having grown up basically in the theater, started working as a usher in theaters when I was 15 as a theater major. And certainly when I was younger, it was considerably more traumatic being gay or having a sexual orientation that wasn't standard. It was a lot tougher 30, 40 years ago than it is today. So on one hand, needless to say, I am happy that people who feel underrepresented in society are represented on television. The best example of this that I can recall was I think it was Whoopi Goldberg's reaction to seeing Nichelle Nichols playing Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek. She said, "My God, here's a Black person. She's not the maid," And Martin Luther King specifically, I think Nichelle wanted out of the show after the first season, and apparently Martin Luther King said, "You can't leave the show. You have to stay. It's very, very important." So to that degree, I think it's great. Now, the thing that I think I have a problem with is, when you ask people, I think this came up a couple years ago. We did a show on this together, Scotty, with Steve. When you ask people, young people especially, what they think the percentage of the population that is gay is, I think they said it's something like, people think it's like 25%. And I'll bet that number's higher now. It's almost impossible to find a show that doesn't have either a gay or when I say gay, I mean the whole LGBT, the whole spectrum of stuff there. And having a character like that in every single show does tend to overrepresent that group, and it overrepresents, I think, the influence that they have.
And I don't have the number for that, by the way. The survey didn't give that number, Bill, but it did
last year. 2 years ago, it was 25. Yeah. Americans thought 25%. The actual number is 2 or 3%.
No, I mean in TV. What I'm saying is they didn't give a number to say how many shows had a gay character. However, they did say out of the 901 characters, both regular and recurring, that they were tracking, last year it was like 6.4% of them were in one of those, broadly speaking, gay categories. And then this year it's up over 8%. So it's about a 37% jump, something like that. But they didn't say how many shows. But I do get the sense what you're saying is like you get the sense that in every show that there is a gay character. And that could tend to make it seem like there are more of them out there than there really are.
Well, I know some people have different views on this. I personally am a guy who believes that somebody else's business is their business. And If what they do with their private life isn't, impinging on my nose, then it's none of my business. But the problem with this is that a great deal of left-wing agenda is camouflaged. Camouflage is not the right word. It's interwoven with the gay and lesbian agenda, and they come as a package. And this is the part that I have some problems with. First of all, if you overrepresent gay people in the society and you do it long enough, you set up unreasonable expectations of what society actually looks like. I mean, like I said, I think it was a year or two ago, 25% of the population was gay, according to the Americans that they surveyed. It's just a little it's a little far from reality, is what it is. And the second thing is, as I say, in this era of political correctness, inclusion usually means, in fact, as far as I can see in show business, I can't think of another example. I might be able to, but pretty much inclusion of gays and minorities and so on equals progressive lecturing and hectoring and this continuing intolerance of any opinion that might be different from them. And that's where I have a problem with all of this.
Well, this is, in a sense, like push polling, is it not? Because GLAAD is putting out this publication every year to keep track of that, basically as a way of holding the industry accountable. I'm wondering, Bill, what would happen if somebody like, the Heritage Foundation, National Review, the American Enterprise Institute, somebody like that would begin tracking the number of characters in TV productions who are conservative and portrayed in positive terms that way, who are aggressive free market people, who are business
Christian
owners, who are Christian, whatever. Why don't we see that kind of tracking? Like, why don't people who have those affiliations more actively try to pressure Hollywood or the TV industry to include them?
Well, this is the entire source of my problem with this. As I say, I'm all about inclusion, and I think the best person for the job, and I don't think anybody should have to live in fear or in shame in the society, as long as they're not hurting other people and obeying the laws, then fantastic. But as I said, these two things are almost inextricably, no, in the entertainment business, they are inextricably linked together. Black people are progressives always. Women are progressives always, unless, of course, they're the villain. Gays are progressive always. And I'm just curious to know, what happens to voices of people like Milo Yiannopoulos or the Log Cabin Republicans or Tammy Bruce, for that matter, people who are openly gay, strongly conservative? Never see them on television. And the reason you never see them on television is because, as I said, this idea of inclusion and diversity is so wrapped up in identity politics, which is wrapped up in progressivism, that to have a character like Milo or Tammy Bruce is to destroy the very hard work of hypnotizing the American people that they've been working on for the last 50 or 60 years or so that we can buy into their left-wing collectivist power scheme. And if there were an equal number of shows about gay conservatives, none of this would bother me. And it doesn't really bother me now, although it's so built into the system, Scotty, and there's no room for debate on this, right? There is no platform ever for people who might have religious objections to homosexuality. They cannot ever be portrayed as anything other than bullies and sadists and potential murderers. You cannot have an honest difference of opinion on this. And this is the world that I am so dead set against and trying so hard to fight against, is this world where you must do what these people tell you to do, believe what they tell you to believe, say the things they tell you to say. And if you don't agree with all of it, if you don't want to bake the cake, then you'll be destroyed.
Perhaps on a related note, X Factor of Malta. I guess every country now has its own X Factor show. X Factor of Malta had a contestant on the show that, you know how they do those little backstory videos where they explain, their lives. And this character, this guy, real guy, said that he was practicing a homosexual lifestyle, but he came to faith in Christ and has since stopped behaving in a homosexual manner. Well, after this show, the makers of the TV show apparently pulled his audition video from YouTube and Facebook because of the backlash. And the government of Malta actually made a statement kind of decrying this sort of hateful, the idea that somebody could be behaving gay and no longer be gay, is so-called gay conversion therapy.
Yeah. You've certainly got to make sure you keep a firm lid on the idea of somebody coming to confession of their sins and looking for redemption. You've got to stamp that out wherever you find it. That's a great example. And even if that person had said, I think that this ought to happen to everybody else, even if that person had been evangelizing for Christianity and saying that I think homosexualism is wrong and should not be allowed at all, even if that person was saying that, I think they have a right to say it. I really do. However, that's not even what they're saying. They're not, this person, as I take the story that you've given me, this person didn't say, I found Jesus and now I think, fags are going to hell. I don't think that's probably what that person said. The fact that a person could make a decision like that is the essence of what is so disturbing about this PC culture and why I think it's going to collapse.
Yeah, he basically stated the biblical view that a man and woman is the proper relationship for sexual relationship. Everything else is sin, which would include a lot of other kinds of sins too. So he basically stated the biblical view on homosexual behavior, and then was yanked from social media and had the government speak out against him. It's amazing, isn't it?
It's not amazing. I've talked before about this idea of Stockholm syndrome, of how people with a gun to their head for long enough, when they're taken hostages, this happened back in Stockholm, where they first noticed that the hostages were identifying not with their rescuers, but identifying with their captors. And the reason they were identifying with them is because if somebody's got a gun to your head and their finger on the trigger, you have a psychological imperative to try to get that person to like you. And it's not like they're making it up. It's not like Stockholm syndrome doesn't mean that we played along like we like the people who were taking us hostage. They genuinely did identify with the people that had guns to their head. And I think that all of Western culture is so deep in Stockholm syndrome now. We did a right angle on that astronaut who quoted Winston Churchill in pretty much a non-political way, just kind of a civility kind of way. And when he was criticized for this, he apologized. He says, I've got a lot more education I need to do, for having an opinion, or not even an opinion, just quoting one of the greatest figures in history. He had to go through the flagellation, and then he had to do the whole apology tour and all the rest. Norm Macdonald, who I think is a brilliantly funny guy, disappointed me quite a lot because he got called out on this finally on something. He said everything Norm Macdonald says is offensive. He's laughing. It's a joke. And he finally said something that for some reason or another got him on the apology train. And I lost a lot of respect for him for that. And I won't do it. I've had a couple opportunities. Once when I was accused of wanting to murder Californians in Texas, and the other time up with the gubernatorial race in Illinois, when I had people in position of authority over me saying, you will apologize for this. And I said, I will not. I will not apologize for it. Because if I apologize for it, it's an admission that somebody could take it seriously, for example, that I really meant that you should kill everybody that comes to Texas from California. It's got to stop.
Well, apologizing for nothing 5 days a week is Bill Whittle. And that's not true, because Bill actually
apologize when I'm wrong.
Yes, he's apologized when he's wrong over time.
That'll have to happen first.
Yeah, that's right. Not this year so far, as by my count. Ladies and gentlemen, you know that this show is made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com. These are people who pony up their own money, their own hard-earned $9.95 a month to make it possible for the people who are watching right now at no cost to be able to enjoy this. If you're the kind of person who wants to be on board with the producers and not just the consumers, you have an opportunity to do so by going to BillWhittle.com and clicking that subscribe link. Become a member today. Like I said, it's just $9.95 a month, and you will be actually doing something tangible to advance your values in this world. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.